I've organized community safety teams to increase public safety. I've also built housing in the heart of the city, and I mentor young women on the Seattle Chinese Community Girls Drill Team to ensure that our next generation of female leaders are successful. In my short time on council, I am most proud to have helped civilianize the Seattle Police Department, ensuring that our officers are making a competitive wage so that we can recruit the best officers in the region. I've also worked to help electrify our ports, making us one of the nation's top electrified ports and ensuring that our cruise ship berths all have electricity. I've also helped represent the city of Seattle in government-to-government negotiations with federally recognized tribes. So I recognize that we live in a world-class city and deserve world-class services. We've come a long ways and we have so much more to go. My office focuses on these top 3 priorities. Number 1 is public safety. I'm building a Seattle that will keep our babies safe, because when our kids are safe, our families are safe, and our communities are safe. Number 2, increasing affordability here in Seattle. We need to ensure that multi-generational families can stay and age in place while also making room for the next generation. And number 3, we need to work on our homelessness issues. We have a long ways to go in terms of that. KCRJ has failed us. We need a regional approach, but we need to make it work. Also, thank you.
I forgot to tell everybody I have this cane that I pull out to get you off the stage when we overrun. Sonatina, would you go next, please?
Hello, everybody. My name is Sonatina Sanchez. My main motivation in running for city council is to break down the silos that exist in city departments and in our nonprofit realm by using the connections that I've made being an organizer in Seattle for the last 20 years. I want to build on the successes that I've been a part of. I'm proud to be endorsed by the Seattle Transit Riders Union, a group I've served as treasurer, and by founding the Bus and Transit Service Work Group, the group that liaisons with the ATU Local 587, Sound Transit, Port of Seattle, King County Metro, and other government agencies that make decisions about our transportation system. I was chosen by my true peers to attend a national conference hosted by Transit Center to bring back Seattle best practices to transition our community away from car-centered design and make progress on our Vision Zero and climate impact goals. I was also asked to represent Transit Riders Union in presenting King Council member Claudia Balducci with a thank you card for being a strong advocate for transit on the East Side. I currently sit on the board of Community Roots Housing as the resident representative, living in a Community Roots Housing building. I've been involved in many community projects over the last 20 years, including being a part of Real Rent to Wamish, the League of Women Voters of Seattle King County, Black Lives Memorial Garden, Unpaving Paradise Peat Patch, Literacy Source, the Seattle Renter Organizing Council, where we advocated for a $50,000 budget line item to create an Office of Rental Standards in the vein of Office of Labor Standards to make sure that the relationship between our renters and our property managers and owners are able to be managed much more successfully than is currently done with SDCI. I also support Treehouse for Kids, where I worked in college with a yearly birthday and fundraiser drive. My passion for public service comes from being raised by a mentally disabled mother and a farm worker father who instilled in me values that I wish to bring to the council. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Sonatina. Darty?
Why run for city council? Why would I uproot a lot of my life to spend a bunch of time asking people for money and doing a lot of things I'd rather not do? It's a question that I think we forget to, is kind of the elephant in the room here. And fundamentally, the reason is because I'm tired. I'm tired of government not being open, not being transparent. I'm tired of the lack of vision that we have in local government. I'm tired of seeing the people that I grew up with unable to make their way through life. I was born a block from here in Virginia Mason, and I grew up in South Seattle in New Holly. Growing up, my family relied a lot on the social safety net and social services, from public housing to public health. I went from Pell Grants and food stamps to being able to own my own home and build a successful life and family. That journey is not possible today. That journey is not possible for most of the people that live in Seattle. And one of the key reasons for that, I believe, is the lack of compassion and care in government. That's something that I hope to bring in, and something that I hope to show is needed and possible. We're told growing up, and we instill those values in our families that compassion and care are so important. Why is government any different? Why do we not care for our neighbors at a systemic level, not just an individual level? And so my priorities in Seattle City Council is going to be focusing on preserving some of the best social safety net programs we have in the nation, and making sure that that buffer that we have, that interaction that we have with government for 70% of what we need on a day-to-day basis, continues to be open, transparent, and accountable to everybody, regardless of who you are. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to move on to the question and answer period of this forum. And we're going to start, Craig, we're going to start with you on question 1. And I'll read you the question. Sorry. Okay. The United States Supreme Court just ruled that cities are allowed under the federal Constitution to punish people experiencing homelessness for sitting or sleeping outside, even though they do not have access to shelter. Would you support or oppose a law criminalizing such contact in Seattle? Why or why not?
There's a lot of opinions I have about the Supreme Court right now. So I went to school at the University of Washington doing my master's in jurisprudence, and doing that while the current Supreme Court has been going has been an adventure, seeing classical traditions that we've had in this country upended. I think we cannot allow ourselves to be dictated by things that are happening at the national and state level. It's important for us to create an affirmative vision of what we believe. I believe that it is inhumane to punish people for something out of their control, out of their circumstances. We cannot take a punitive approach to homelessness. We need to provide options and ways that people can uplift themselves and get into better situations. Fundamentally, those things are outside of their control, and we need to take a human-first approach. Nobody wants to be on the street. That's where a lot of people are, though. And so let's actually think critically of how we're going to solve that instead of just sweeping them away to another place.
And anytime you want me to repeat a question, just let me know.
Thank you. Yes, I have followed this case very closely. As I mentioned in my opening, I have worked with mutual aid groups, primarily the Black Lives Memorial Garden, and we supported a warming shelter on Nagel next to Cal Anderson Park. And from that experience, I know that when we were able to stabilize people, we were able to get housing for 4 to 5 people because their caseworkers were able to find them. When you're living on the street, you don't have electricity, it's hard to charge your phone, it's hard to keep in contact with people and get services and make it around the town. And so I think that criminalizing instead of supporting our neighbors with services, and our neighbors include people who are housed and unhoused. The services that I talk about in terms of trash pickup and bathrooms are things that will help everybody in our society. And so if we provide them for people who are the most vulnerable right now, it will benefit us all. And that's the approach I think we should be taking as a society.
And now it's your turn, Tanya.
So I also run a mutual aid group. We walk once a week. I've gone to encampments, and I talk to people, and I do support Mayor Harrell's plan on making sure that every single person is offered a shelter or housing before going in and resolving an encampment. And usually they will not go in and resolve the encampment unless about 2 or 3 months ahead of time we have social workers coming in to get to know people, build trust, and that there is shelter or housing available for people to move into. And no, I know there are a lot of people who refuse to go into shelter or housing. And with that, I believe that many people have been through the system is broken, they lost trust, they're not allowed to go into shelters because they have a pet or they have a partner. And so with that, we need to make sure we build trust by making sure that there's constant social workers out at encampments helping build that trust of our unhoused neighbors and community involvement as well. Thank you.
Moving now to question 2. The City Council will decide how to close the more than $250 million gap anticipated in next year's budget. Since the city's fiscal year runs from January to December 31, if elected, you will not be part of this year's budget cutting effort, with the exception, of course, of Councilwoman Wu. Nevertheless, what categories of funding would you recommend be cut or eliminated, and what high priority programs would you protect? If you are elected to the council, you'll be dealing with it in the next year in any event. Please be as specific as possible. Let's begin with Tanya.
Thank you. So yes, we do have a $250 million budget deficit, even more with the latest union contracts that we have just passed in council. And so I believe everything is on the table. We need to make sure that taxpayers' investments are being paid off and that you are seeing results on our streets. We need to make sure that our departments are delivering results. And so I think it's very important to have that measurement. I know a lot of people ask about Jumpstart. And in the past, we have used the excess funding from Jumpstart to help supplement the budget. And I think that's something that we're looking at possibly. Another thing I really want to highlight is economic development. 60% of our budget is paid for by our small businesses. And so making sure that we help economic vitality, we help our small businesses, we help our communities and nonprofits is very important because that helps the entire city.
Sarafine?
I am in support of a 2% Seattle capital gains tax to plug up our budget to, and I want to put that out there first because I think that we should also, when we say everything is on the table, we need to include the police budget that ballooned our $200 million deficit to $250 million currently. And so there are consequences to the decisions that are being made on council, and right now, council is increasing our budget without a lot of value being seen for it. We have a $1.1 or so million fund for ghost cops, funding that will never be used to hire police because it's not projected to ever be possible. And we could be using that to hire a group of janitors and maintenance workers for our park system to, again, open up the bathrooms year round. So these are the kinds of things that I want to look at, is how do we increase our revenue base without going to regressive sources, and how do we make sure we're spending things on the right services?
Terry?
Yeah, I think like all of us mentioned here, we're not gonna get to a balanced budget without bringing in more progressive revenue options that bring some of that wealth that we have in our communities and spreading it across everyone that needs them. My priority for whatever deficit ends up coming in through next year is going to be one, making sure that we maintain the, I guess what I call frontline programs. These are the programs that you go face to face when dealing. These are going to be things like, say, you know, I need to you know, I'm currently receiving housing vouchers. I want to make sure that those continue. Things that help ensure survival and stability. The second thing is making sure that we keep promises. When we've earmarked money for a reason, we want to make sure that it stays there. And then 3, responsible investments. We can't continue to throw away money at different things that are half measures or not proven. And we've seen that in the last couple of years in City Council, and I think that's what we need to change. Thank you.
You can sit down, but you'll have to get up in a minute. Question 3. What policy options would you promote to help achieve carbon neutrality?
Yeah, I think one of the big things is figure out ways we can systemically improve everyone's carbon footprint as a whole. Increasing transit options is a huge solution for that. Increasing options for micromobility, whether that is the various scooters or whatnot, to dial a ride to MetroFlex. We need to create solutions that work for everybody. And I think the more that we can prioritize and put resources into that, that is going to make a significant impact. There's numbers of other things that the city has done historically around building codes and ensuring that we're able to plan our city forward for a more sustainable future. One of the things that I want to prioritize is ensuring that we are building healthy ecosystems within each neighborhood. You shouldn't need to be able to go across town to get your groceries. You should be able to go maybe 1 or 2 blocks. If we can build local sustainable communities, we can build a local sustainable environment.
Next up is Sanatina.
A lot of that 20-year organizing experience that I mentioned earlier has been involved in transportation, transit, biking, and climate action. All of these are intimately connected. We know that 60 to 70% of our carbon emissions are made from our transportation system, mostly single occupancy vehicles. And so when we design our cities to be more human-centered, transit-oriented, developed, walkable, when we have the ability to build 6 floors and small commercial stores in dense neighborhoods, people want to walk around and businesses thrive and our communities thrive, and it's better for the environment and people and us all. And so that's my main thing, is in order for us to get to our climate goals, as well as Vision Zero, we need to look at our land use and make sure that we are planning our communities in order to transition away from car-centric design.
Your turn, Tanya.
I chair the Sustainability Committee. And there are a couple of things that are coming up. We're looking at the building emissions program and making sure we're doing the rulemaking for that. I think trees are very important. We're not reaching our goal of 30% tree canopy. I live in South Seattle. It's a heat island, a tree desert. And so how do we look at policies that allow for building housing and trees? It's not either or, we could do both. And I think that's very important. Also, I noticed that other countries are able to reach carbon neutrality because of usage of solar panels. And so how do we connect federal funding to our local communities, especially marginalized communities, to be able to have access to this fund, to be able to put solar panels on top of their buildings, basically. And I also believe that the transportation plan will have an opportunity to allow for more EV charging stations and for more trees as well. Thank you.
Okay, we're gonna pass. I got everybody? Did I leave anybody out? No, okay. Sometimes I do that, not by intent. Our next question, we're gonna shift now to another topic. What action would you take as a city council member to reduce gun violence in the city? And so, Tina, we'll start with you on this one.
I was born here in Seattle. I grew up down in Holly Park and King Way and Yesler Terrace in the 80s. And so I distinctly remember drive-by shootings and gangs selling lots of drugs around my neighborhoods. And I know that if a lot of my classmates and my neighbors were given other options, if they were able to sign up for classes at community centers, if they were able to sign up for sports, if they could afford these things, they would have done them, but they weren't. And so that's one of the things, is I come from a community which we had to fight to participate in hobbies that we loved, and I want to make that easy. I want to make sure that every single kid in Seattle can sign up for any extracurricular activity they want, and we can have a scholarship program of some sort. We need to make sure that we give options, good options, and encourage the children that we see to develop their passions outside of the violent cycle that we currently see.
And I believe Santina is correct. It starts with our young people. I was at the site of a 14-year-old child who was shot in Uvalde Park this last week, and was talking to neighbors, talking to family members, and communities saying that, we have failed our kids because the parents are asking for more resources for their communities to be able to allow for their children to have activities to go to. I mean, we just had the shooting at Garfield High School, Alderwood Mall, not in Seattle, but still where that 13-year-old was shot. It's very sad. It's affecting our young people the most. I've also talked to the gentleman who was shot outside of a hookah lounge this past week. And talking to family members, they want to see more community dialogue. The people who are closest to the issues have the solutions, and we need to listen and we need to implement them.
Sorry.
Yeah, I think most people, we don't resort to violence unless we are pushed in a situation where we have to do that. Providing stability and providing a sense of community is key to that. Providing things like making sure, do kids have meals to eat? Do kids have a place to stay? Do kids feel safe in their homes? These are key things where that address the systemic factors that cause not just gun violence, but all types of crime. With guns specifically, we need to, I want to lobby the state to pass a permit to purchase program. It is essential that we know that anybody who owns a firearm has a responsibility of keeping that safe. And I want to see an expansion of civil penalties. I'll be open to seeing an expansion of civil penalties for violations of safe storage laws. You have a firearm, it is your responsibility to take care of it as you would when you're going to a range or you're with a family member.
We have just one more question before we go to the closing statements. And for this question, we'd like to start with Tanya first. And the question is, what actions do you propose or would you propose to reach an adequate level of staffing for the Seattle Police Department?
So there are a couple of things that council has done in the last couple of months. We helped make sure that our officers are making a competitive wage so that we could hire the best officers. Prior to that, we were getting about 3 applications a week, and now that's tripled. We're getting 10 or 12 applications. We also need to make sure that our officers have the resources they need to be successful. I believe it's not just officers that need to respond to every situation. We have expanded our care team, which is very exciting here to D3. And so we are working on making sure that happens in the next budget cycle. We also have to make sure that we are expanding our services, making sure that there's wraparound care for people when they are ready to seek treatment, that's available. And I think most importantly, we need to work with our communities. I love the Before the Badge program, where cadets go into communities and learn about the communities they serve. I think it's about changing the tone and making sure that when we pick the next police chief, that this person is the right person for the job. And I'm very excited about Chief Sue Rohr's work with 30 by 30, and thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was happy to see the expansion of the CARE program. We've seen this program work so successfully in other cities where you take and provide specialized response solutions to the crises that people are facing. I think the way that we address a lot of staffing issues is by looking at where we can build out those more specialized responses outside of an officer, with a gun. I think the majority of cases, I actually looked at the dispatch data, I think roughly 2/3 of the cases that were dispatched last year could have been solved without, an officer showing up with a firearm, except just to protect a dispatcher or to protect someone who is there. And so I think we need to really radically expand that and provide and make it easier so that when officers come in, they're going to a call, they know exactly what they're going to, instead of having to be the catch-all for any kind of issue that anybody has.
Sorry.
I am of the mind I'm of the mind we currently have plenty of police in our city, and I'm wondering what jobs we are looking to have done. Right now, as when I ride transit or if I walk through my parks, I see lots of security guards currently, and I wonder, could those people be wiping down the stairwells or looking at our escalators or elevators? And if something does happen, they can call it in if something's really needed. These are people we can support with training for de-escalation tactics. I worked at DESC during the pandemic, and I often had to de-escalate situations with people who were in altered states, and I did not have any weapons on me, and in fact, they probably would have made the situation worse. And so I ask, what are we funding? What jobs are we funding? And if we really want to bring public safety to our streets, we need to start funding the people who care for our streets, like janitors, maintenance workers, waste pickup, and all that kind of stuff. Thank you.
Well, that concludes the question and answer part of the forum, and we're now going to move to closing remarks. And this time, we're going to be starting with Sanatina.
Sorry, let me get my.
Oh, you want to?
Just a moment.
Okay.
Sorry. Okay. So I was, from my opening statement, I wanted to go into my closing and let you all know my passion for public service comes from my family. My mom is a lifelong mentally disabled woman who is functionally illiterate and was still expected to navigate and get through the world like everybody else without understanding. And so from a very young age, I learned how to translate these complex systems, the bureaucracy and the social services, in order to make sure that we could get services sometimes. My dad also developed this passion for service in me by teaching us to be compassionate to everyone. These lessons took this form of stories where he told us he would stand up to bullies, and one of the ones that sticks out is when he stuck up for a gay kid in high school, and it made me feel safe that I could come out to him in a time in the 90s where it was very scary, and you could very easily be sent out on the street, and honestly that still is the case. And I bring these experiences by continuing to work in my community. I am at Cal Anderson Park every Monday morning at 9 a.m. serving breakfast with the community, chatting with the people on the street about what their issues, what do they need from their council member. And I continue to participate in various volunteer roles. As I said, I sit on the board of Community Roots Housing. I was also the guest relations coordinator at the Seattle International Film Festival for many years, and so I was able to interact with people, volunteers, all the way up to A-list stars. And I know every single job at a organization, every single person on a project matters. And that's the kind of attitude I'm hoping to bring to Seattle City Council, is making sure that the people who serve our city in office and in the administration are respected, and we make Seattle a place where we can all boast about what a world-class city it is. Thank you.
Thank you, Sanatina. Tanya?
I think it's a very exciting time to be on the Seattle City Council. We have council members now who are collaborative. We're all in person, and we all have shared priorities, united in terms of what we hope for the city, in terms of public safety, building more housing, and affordability. I've been endorsed by all but one of the council members. I also just was endorsed by the Seattle Times today. And so I believe that we represent the city and promoting more civility, and more collaboration. One thing I want to touch on that I thought would get asked, but wasn't, is housing. We need to build more housing. That's where my experience has come in. I helped redevelop the Louisa Hotel apartments into workforce housing, and I'm working on legislation currently that will help jumpstart more housing development. You look around, all the cranes are gone, and it's very important that 2 to 3 years from now, we're gonna feel that housing deficit. So I'm working on legislation that help incentivize developer benefits as well as the public benefit to get that started. I also want to be able to save our trees, so looking at legislation that will allow for density bonuses if people save trees. I'm also looking at air rights, so my lived experience really do help with how I legislate. Another thing I think is really important is public safety. You deserve to feel safe going to the QFC, to Harvard Market, going to the park, and that's something I'm really interested in, making sure that we make those community investments so that people will be able to go to the grocery store and not have to fear for their kids or their cousins or their parents' safety. So my work speaks for itself. I walk every single week. I'm out in community. I go to as many public meetings as I can, and when I hear that there's a community that needs to be heard, I go out there. I grew up in the Chinatown International District. I'm a small business owner. I have a family restaurant. And so making sure we close that wealth gap is also very important. How do we help our entrepreneurs? How do we help people find good paying wage jobs? And so I ask for your support. My name is Tanya Wu, and ask for your vote to keep Seattle affordable, safe, and a place to live.
The last word is yours, Tarek.
All Excellent. Thank you all for showing up. This is really important to have so many people engaged and involved. One of the challenges with running for this position is just a remaining 1-year term. There's not a whole, we can talk about what our vision is, and I think that's important, but I think the thing that I want to be able to bring to City Council is showing how could our local government work better. We're fortunate in Seattle to be able to afford full-time council positions. For someone whose job is 40 hours a week to help make the city better, what can that look like? How do you balance that with direct service, accountability, and action? And I've asked myself this question every day since I learned that it was a full-time position. And I think that even though this position is 1 year, and it's hard to get a lot done in a year, the government timeline. But I think what we can do is say, this is what a world-class city really looks like. This is what a city on the world stage really looks like. And this is how we paint our identity as being proud residents and members of the Pacific Northwest, where we don't force out our community and our neighbors, but we bring them in, bring them safe places to heal and to learn and to be part of our communities. And I'm hoping that that vision resonates with all of you here and that we can bring those values into City Council. Thank you.
Thank you all, and now you can all applaud for the wonderful certainly I'm going to turn this over to Meg Ursel, who has a few closing comments to make. I just want to thank all of you who are here. I believe that this in-person approach to the forums really brings you out, and it's wonderful to do what we do together, which is listen in community when we have the privilege of hearing people who are willing to put their careers on the line, their futures, by standing up and becoming candidates. So thank you again. And Meg, where are you? Over you.
Well, I just wanted to tell you that our next election forum is 1 week from today, on July 15th. And that will feature the statewide insurance commissioner race, as well as the contest for the state superintendent of public construction, 2 very important state offices. The moderator for that one will be Bill Anderson, and you will have an opportunity to send questions in. And you will also be able to see that forum via Zoom on HHTV or on the large screens right behind me here in Anderson Hall. The reason that we're doing it as a webinar is that these are statewide positions, and people from Eastern Washington